Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to spend them here with me on the channel. My name is Parker, and in today's video, we're going to be going over a Denver Broncos mock draft here. Now, a lot of news has recently come out around the Denver Broncos, such as the Broncos potentially shopping a veteran player. Now, there have been a couple of sources that say that they're on the trade block. There's been a couple of sources that say they're not on the trade block. Personally, I'm not trusting anybody right now because this is when a lot of smoke screens start to happen kind of around free agency and the draft. So, yeah, I don't know. We definitely could be shopping Garrett Bowles, which I think would be probably a bad idea because he is on the older side. We drafted him in 2017 when he was 25 years old, but offensive linemen can play into their mid-30s, early 40s for some of them. So to me, I think it would be not the smartest idea to shop Garrett Bowles. And then, of course, there's Courtland Sutton, which I don't know if that would be the worst move in the world with the emergence of Tim Patrick the past 2 seasons before he tore his ACL this season. He honestly kind of played the role of Sutton as that deep threat, high pointing the ball and coming down with it receiver. So to me, it wouldn't be the worst thing to get draft capital for Sutton, especially with the emergence of Jerry Jeudy as our wide receiver 1. But that's not going to be covered in this video because I'm not going to do a mock trade until the full offseason prediction video or until, the trade actually happens. So today, we're just going to be doing a mock draft, and before we get started, I just want to remind you that Jesus is King. I pray that you give your life to him. He's got a plan and a purpose for you, and I just truly hope that you accept Jesus with your whole heart and believe that he died on the cross for your sins. And if you truly believe that, and you truly believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, then you'll go to heaven. It's that simple. It's that easy. It's by grace through faith in which we are saved. Now, the Bible verse of the day that I have here is Romans chapter 12 verse 9, and it's a verse that I've been kind of meditating on a few days ago, and I feel like it's a kind of an important verse that is overlooked, and it's love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. And to me, what this says is true, I guess not necessarily true love, but love, for it to be sincere, you must hate what is evil. And in this case, to love God and love Jesus, you have to hate what is evil, which is sin. And it's hard. We all of us fall back into sin. But if we hate sin, and then you got to cling on to what is good. And to me, that's Jesus sacrificing himself on the cross, and then of course being resurrected 3 days later for us to be able to spend eternity in heaven. So I feel like this is an important verse, and it's one that I've been meditating on and I liked, so I wanted to share it with you all. And now with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump in to the mock draft. In the third round, with our first of back-to-back picks in the third round, 67th overall, I have us selecting Blake Freeland, offensive tackle out of BYU. Blake is honestly a massive human being at 6'8", 304 pounds, and to me, he would play that not blindside tackle, but he would play in at that right tackle position. Of course, we've had a revolving door around there for the past few years. A couple years ago, it was Jawan James, and it was Bobby Massey, Cam Fleming, Billy Turner, Calvin Anderson. I think it's going to be important for the Broncos to find a guy at that right tackle position. If not in the draft, then in free agency, or, if we do draft Blake Freeland and maybe he's not the best, then maybe potentially we look to draft one next year. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see where the Broncos go, but I really like Blake Freeland out of BYU, and I think that solidifying the offensive line should be the Broncos' number one priority, whether that be in free agency or in the draft. And, of course, right now we don't know what's going to happen in free agency. I'm not predicting any moves. So, right here, I have Blake Freeland. And then with the 68th pick, which we got from the Colts last year, when we traded back with the Colts for a 5th, and then, of course, this third round pick, I have us selecting one of my personal favorite players in the entire class, and that's Emil Ekiyor, a guard out of Alabama. Ekiyor, to me, is one of the most underrated prospects in this class. I think that he probably should be a second round pick, but he does fall to us here in the early third round, and I instantly scooped him up because Ekiyor is one of my favorite players. And from what it sounds like, the Broncos might not bring back Dalton Risner, the Colorado kid. He said he wants to be here, but he also wants to get paid. And right now, with the Broncos cap space, I don't know if necessarily he's going to get that deal. So I feel like Dalton Risner will probably be on a new team next year. And when you look at the other guards on the team, you've got Quinn Miners, who of course is going to be the starting right guard in my opinion. Maybe you move him over to left guard if you want him to, and then you could move Ekiyor to whatever open guard position that Quinn is not playing. But then you got Graham Glasgow, who I believe is on the final year of his deal, and quite frankly could be a cap casualty to free up space potentially. And then you got 5th round rookie Luke Wattenberg, who didn't really impress me last year. So to me, I feel like it's important to get guard help. And Emil Ekiyor is one of my favorite guards in this entire class. Shoot, I think he's probably my number 2 guard in this class. I know I'm a little bit higher on Ekiyor than a lot of people are, but if we could get Ekiyor, I think this would be a fantastic pick in the 3rd round. He's 6'3", 307 pounds, and yeah, I think that would be a fantastic pick. Then, and moving on to the 4th round, pick 108. I have us selecting Olusegun Oluwatimi, but I just abbreviated it as Olu because I'm not going to say Olusegun every time I'm talking about Olu right here. So he is 6'3", 307 pounds, the same as Emil Ekiyor. That's not a typo. He is the exact same height and weight according to all the sources that I've checked on Michigan Athletics, on ESPN, all that. He's 6'3", 307 pounds, and the Broncos, to me, need to address the center position because Lloyd Cushenberry is entering his last year on his rookie deal, and that was when he was drafted that was if you're talking about head coaches, 2 head coaches ago with Vic Fangio drafting him, and of course that was John Elway as GM as well. And, he's been solid. He hasn't been spectacular, but he hasn't been horrible, and I just don't know if the Broncos will necessarily bring him back next season. So I think it would be smart for the Broncos to prepare to draft a center, to develop that center, and maybe even have a center competition this year. And that's with Oluwatimi here. He could potentially take the starting job, or he could sit behind Cushenberry this year and then take over the starting center role next year. But I think it's always good to be prepared and to have someone ready to go for the offensive line. With the 5th pick, I have us selecting Owen Papao, linebacker out of Auburn. To me, this was between one of 2 positions, either linebacker, obviously right here, or cornerback, because I do think it's important to get some depth cornerback. I just don't know if we're going to have the ability to address cornerback in this draft unless we draft one in the 6th round, which would be our final pick in this draft. But will we do that? We'll have to see. But in 41 games with the Auburn Tigers, Papao has had 145 solo tackles, 111 assist tackles, 256 total tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 7 passes defended, and 2 interceptions. I feel like he could almost do everything at the linebacker position. He can drop back into coverage if you want. He can help stuff the run. He can help rush the passer if you need him to. He's got all the tools to do that. Maybe isn't necessarily the best at all those things right now, but I feel like with some development, maybe behind Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, if you bring him back for another year, I think that he could have a very solid development time. Maybe he starts, but I would say maybe he's going to be linebacker 3-4 with Jonas Griffith there. Well, maybe like Alex Singleton, Josie Jewell starts, or if you don't bring back Alex Singleton, you start Josie Jewell and Jonas Griffith, and then have Owen Papao as that number 3 inside linebacker. But yeah, that's just me. Papao was honestly someone who I identified early in the process. This was like right after the 2022 NFL draft, and of course I knew we didn't have a 1st round pick with the Russell Wilson trade, so I started to look at players that we could draft in the 3rd round, because that was obviously our first pick. And then I identified Papao, and I've kind of watched him in the Auburn Tigers all season. and he's kind of fallen in the draft board, but he's still someone who I would love for the Broncos to draft. He's one of my guys if you saw the My Guys video. So Papau would be a huge pickup and someone who I'd love for the Broncos to draft. And then in the 6th round, with our final pick in this draft, I have us selecting Keaton Mitchell, running back out of Eastern Carolina. Obviously, Javonte Williams is our number 1 running back, but with his injury last season with that ACL tear, I don't think he's going to be ready for the start of the season. I think he's going to miss the first quarter of the season, the first 4 weeks, maybe a couple weeks after that as well. So I'm hoping we bring back Latavius Murray to the squad. He was very, very solid for us last year. And then you look at the other running backs. I don't know if we're going to bring back Mike Boone or Marlon Mack. So then you got Chase Edmonds, who I think needs to restructure his contract if he wants to be back with the Broncos next season. But Keaton Mitchell is someone who I've identified as someone who I want in the 6th round. Of course, I loved Tajay Spears out of Tulane, but as soon as I posted that mock draft with us drafting him in the 6th round, his stock just skyrocketed. So obviously a lot of people saw what I saw in Tajay Spears. And so I think he definitely deserves to go higher than the 6th round where I had him. I think he's going to be probably a 4th round pick if I were to guess. But Keaton Mitchell is someone who I really like in the 6th round here. Someone who that the Broncos can balance with Latavius Murray and Keaton Mitchell. Maybe have them as the 1-2 punch while we wait for Javonte Williams to come back. So yeah, I think Keaton Mitchell would be a solid pickup in the 6th round. And again, to me here, it's between running back here, cornerback, and defensive line. I really wanted to take a cornerback here because this is a extremely strong cornerback class, but I felt like we had to address the offensive line with the early picks, and then as we get down here, I don't think really any corners are going to make or be super impactful because we don't really need a cornerback for this year necessarily, right? But it's next season when a lot of the corners' contracts, except for Damari Mathis and Pat Surtain, their contracts expire when we're going to need some more cornerbacks. And, of course, the Broncos could grab someone in free agency like Amani Oruwariye, someone who I really want in free agency. But, yeah, I decided to go running back here because I didn't like the value of defensive line at this position. And I feel like we're probably going to draft a cornerback early next year, whether that be in the 1st round, although I would kind of hope for an offensive tackle if Blake Freeland doesn't work out, or if, depending on who our offensive tackle is, I'd want an offensive tackle in the 1st round next year, or maybe you draft one in the 3rd round, potentially next year, a cornerback. So there's a lot of different options we could go. And I know a lot of Broncos fans actually commented under my last mock draft, like they wanted to address defensive line. I kind of see it, but at the same time, I don't know, because you got DJ Jones as that interior defensive lineman, right? Then you have Draymond Jones as your left end. And then at the right end, you probably plug in Ioma Uwazurike, a 4th round pick, who I think you maybe want to give a shot to. And then you also got Matt Henningsen, Deshaun Williams, if the Broncos decide to re-sign him. So to me, defensive line isn't really a super big need like a lot of other Broncos fans think it is. And hey, props off to them. If you think that's a need, you think that's a need. But to me, it wasn't a super big need. So the draft class here for the Broncos is going to be as follows. Blake Freeland, offensive tackle out of BYU. Emil Ekiyor Jr., guard out of Alabama. Olu Oluwatimi, or Olusegun Oluwatimi, if you want to use his first name, a center out of Michigan. Owen Papau, a linebacker out of Auburn. And Keaton Mitchell, running back out of Eastern Carolina. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel down below if you're brand new. My name is Parker. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.